Welcome to Hear Your Empire Speak Now. I am the Wow Empress AliNICOLE WOW, and I am serving as a New Era Business Communications Advisor and Authority. And before we get started, I just want to preface by sharing just a little bit about the nature of this particular segment here, where I'm able to get very present and hear the voice and the vibe of an empire. And it's something that I've been doing over the years, and I've really enjoyed helping small business owners and entrepreneurs, also several other industry service providers really start to hear the voice of their business and establish what I call a solid relationship with their empires. And being able to do this by leveraging the power of intentional journaling, but there's so much more, to this, but that certainly is one of the gateways that I leverage as an entry point, to this connection. And I just want to provide a disclaimer that this isn't psychic work. It's what I call a very high level of mastery, and it's really about being connected to the power of the present awareness and having that connection to the business as if it really is a living, breathing organism, so to speak, that you can be in partnership with. And that's what it's all about. So I'm excited because in this session, I am with my STAR Queen Celebrity-preneur, Gina Gardiner. She's my STAR Queen Protégé, actually. And we're going to be getting present with discovering her now and next level alignment for her empire's expansion. And Gina is very familiar with this process, and she actually has facilitated masterclass training with me in this area, and she so graciously hosted it on her platform. And in the description box, you will see that there's a link to that signature masterclass, and it's actually called Your Business is Speaking, Listen, Understand, and Act. And there'll also be some helpful resources, websites, and information about Gina and I. So I'm really excited. Gina has several different empires, so we will get present to see which business desires to be heard and how she can partner with her empire for a greater expansion. So Gina, I am so excited and thrilled to have you here and to get started.
Thank you. I'm equally excited. They're always such an interesting opportunity to see things from a different perspective and to move forward. So yeah, very excited. Thank you.
Yes, I love what you said there, the opportunity to be in an experience that provides the opportunity to see things from a different perspective and in a higher perspective and connect with, who knows, there's really just a realm of infinite possibilities, isn't it? Yeah, I would say so. And it's exciting because you've been in this, you've been through processes, like these, before, because especially some time back when we did a masterclass together, and you so graciously hosted that and participated, within that experience. And so, the importance of taking the time out to be in tune, be in touch, and, and listen to what your business is speaking.
Certainly very powerful. And I think one of the things that makes it so powerful is that we tend to stay within the confines of our own arena of thinking. And so when somebody, initially it was a case of expanding that hoop, if you like, that you were seeing, and then exploding the hoop so that those boundaries no longer are there, and starting to recognize that we so often keep ourselves playing small, and we think it's safe, but actually it's an illusion.
Very much so.
So part of this is about, we talk about comfort zones. This is different. This is your thinking zone. And if it stays within that very tight, narrow band of thinking, then it can't actually reach its potential at all.
Well stated. You're absolutely right. And if we don't continue in that process of expanding and exploding, then we don't evolve. And for those who are service providers and leaders, entrepreneurs, that if you don't evolve, then your business, which has that potential to evolve and desires, it doesn't evolve, but also those who you're supposed to be here to make an impact on, they don't evolve in the ways that they could. And so that's why it's important to have this unique type of relationship, so that you can be in harmony and unification with all that you're doing. That is the brand of who you are, the empire, your products, all of these different elements. And this has been one of the most, I would say, overlooked elephants in the room in terms of being able to see your empire. It's not just, okay, this is just a business, this is just what I'm doing, what I feel called to do, but literally treating it as it is alive. It is, and it does have a voice, not an audible voice, so to speak, but it has vibes and tones, things that you can pick up and know and get a sense. And you've had, processes, like I said before, where you've had to listen to what your voice was versus what the business was. And you can definitely attest that there are two different voices, aren't they?
There certainly are. And I think for me, one of the issues is that there's so much white noise in life at the moment, that going through this sort of process, one of the things that it does is that you have the space, a safe space to explore.
Yes.
But the white noise drifts away, and you can actually hear something that has, I'm sure, always been there.
Yes.
It's
right.
just been blotted out. And the more you practice it, the easier it gets. And
absolutely.
I think the other thing to say to people who are thinking about this is we tend to preconceived ideas, and then we stay within those preconceptions. And one of the things that I've learned from working with you is there is no such thing as a preconceived conception. That actually this is about new ways of thinking.
Absolutely.
And there's an old saying, isn't there, that the thinking that's got us to this place is not going to be the thinking that takes us forward.
Absolutely. That is so true. So right.
This is not a reiteration or a slightly embellished form of thinking.
Oh, I love how you said that.
Moving you into a different way of thinking, which is much more expansive. But at the same time, it takes it down to its essence. So it's not complicated. It makes life simpler, but at the same time, it makes life much more, the opportunity is much richer.
I agree wholeheartedly. Oh, I love how you stated that. That was incredible. And I love what you said about, the newness, and that's, even why this experience is really about hear your empire speak now, because now is in the power of the present moment. Because though there could have been insights that came at another point, before this powerful now, but we want to be present with that, and then also see, is there any expansion from something that was some insights that came at another point, and what do they mean now, even versus, yesterday or last week or a few days ago, a few months ago or so. It's that we just want to know what the empire is saying about that particular thing now. So yeah, so we're ready to get started.
Oh, absolutely. Very
Yay. Okay. So before we actually do get present with the empire, or just with your, I would say just your overall entrepreneurial, leaderpreneurial, and brand and business experience. Kind of being with the whole of it to see what will come up. Let's take about 3 deep breaths, okay? Okay. And also, going to ask that several of the journals or so that you have of mine, that you have those so we can just be present in case you need to jot something down within one of those that could be relevant to whatever comes up. So at some point within this session, we could be leveraging those. So yay! So I'm excited to see, like I said, how that plays into it as well, because the journaling process, like I said, is one of the I would say most resourceful tools and practices to use, especially when someone isn't used to being in relationship with their business. It's just a great way to build that relationship and start to make that connection. But obviously, I encourage it to be an ongoing process, because that really is how you can hear and track the insights and the wisdom that are coming up. So at this time, I'm going to be present with just kind of the whole of your experience. And I also want you to be present with it too, with the holistic approach to your brand and empire. And so we'll take just a few moments just to be present with that. And what will probably happen is I will ask you what came up, what came up for you around that. So we'll see whether I initiate that to say what came up for me or what came up for you. So we'll just be present and see. All right. Okay, so take another nice deep breath, please. Okay, so we'll just be in the space here with the holistic experience here. Okay, so actually before I ask you, I'm actually being guided to go into a journal that I highly recommend. That's one of mine. If this is one of mine, you wouldn't have this particular one, but you've actually been through this process before. And I will have a link to this particular one within the description, but it's called The Power of Intentional Journaling for Business Made Easy. It's the basic benefits of intentional journaling for creating business breakthroughs. So there's several questions within this particular journal process, and I'm allowing myself to be guided because I was guided to actually pick this up. And give me just a moment. Okay, so actually this particular one is not a question, but it's a prompt of a statement to complete. And it says, I'm curious to know. So before we actually get started in hearing from the empire that you feel came out, or an aspect, whether it's a product or an element, there's something that you're curious about. So let's hear about what you're curious to know about.
As you know, I have a number of different strands to my brand, different empires within the empire.
Yes.
And I suppose...
Of course you do.
I'm curious to know, as we're approaching 2022, which are going to be those which are the greatest priority, particularly in the early part of the year. I'm curious to know how best to spend my time, and how best to grow myself in order to be able to not just support the business, but to actually propel the business forward.
Yes, to accelerate that. Okay. So in that curiosity to know that, is there a particular empire that came to the forefront for you as you were being present?
I think it's the speaking, it's the getting out, the being present, being seen, getting the message out through having that opportunity to communicate physically, which seems to me the empire which is calling.
Absolutely. And you are accurate in that, because that is certainly the vibration, in the sense that came up around the communication factor. And that communications factor is very multi-leveled. Of course it is, because of what we do and everything. And so there's a higher level, though, that is desiring to be expressed. And it's interesting because initially I mentioned about getting present with the whole of your brand experience and empire, and not just tuning into one or the other. So it is really about the holistic experience of you and the communication factor around that. And because you are going to be stepping more into your multiplicity and multifunctional, aspect in that way, then the communications factor will be coming more across the board in those variety of areas. And it's going to show up in very different, unique ways. And though we've been preparing for quite a bit of that, but what we know to be true now is that wants to take the center stage. And so with that taking the center stage, what we'll be more present with is the particular element and aspect of what wants to be and desires to be communicated. The voice. What voice of whether a product, a concept, a specific platform wants to actually jumpstart this initiative. So give me just a moment too, because I'm going to be, even more present here. There's a variety of things that come up, but the overall arching goal is also, because it's your empire, to be able to be in tune and in touch, with that. And so a lot of the prompts will be for you to tune into that particular aspect. So take a few deep breaths and tune into that aspect as well of what is desiring to be the forerunner or the focal point at this time. So I will say this as you are being present, and this is not surprising, because this has actually been coming up in awareness to me for quite some time, but stronger this week actually around you, and actually stepping more into your branding authority and being able to communicate the importance of being a genuine brand, being a more authentic brand. And for yourself, just through the processes that you've been through with me, that there has been where, of course, your empire of genuinely you, and then there's been the expansion of that with the genuinely you leadership, and then the genuinely new you leadership, all of those, different aspects in the multifunctional way. And even though that's been your primary focus for quite some time, you have definitely agreed in other trainings and sessions and conversations that you were not demonstrating the true, authentic, genuine expression of yourself. And now that you see all of what has come forth through your branding, it's representing even more and more the potential that was untapped, that you couldn't even imagine, that all of what has taken place is taking place. So there's other individuals who aren't aware of that. And though they think they're showing up authentically, they're really not, because they're unaware of this unexplored realm of their potential. And so now there's going to be the opportunity to learn about how just unique the branding is. And something that else is coming up, or has been even more recently, is that was going to be something within the context of the more expanded work that you and I do together, is being able to co-facilitate and teach together on that level, because that's not actually been one of the areas you've actually been teaching with me in terms of the branding aspect. And so that's something that is emerging even in a grander, communications, factor. But we'll come over, because there's a lot of variations that are coming up at this point. But I want to now hear from what you got a sense of and what you heard from your empire.
Just before then, just in terms of response of what you were saying, in terms of the stepping into the more authentic version of myself,
mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that I've recognized is that previously I was trying to fit into a particular mold that
right.
all the gurus and the marketing people were saying had to happen, which was, you can't, your branding can't be for everybody. It's got to be very niched, and that never felt aligned. But
of course not.
That's what I didn't know any better. And
right.
people put themselves forward as great experts and marketers, and obviously works for some people.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't working for me at any level.
Right.
I think that for authenticity, it is about owning fully who I am.
Absolutely.
And the gifts that I have been given in terms of my experiences and expertise that I've developed, and recognizing that it's not designed to fit into a box.
No.
It's a series, and this
of your expression. Yeah, it's multiple expressions of who you are. And so I'm going to preface something, or just kind of back up here. For those who aren't familiar with my branding, I'm branded in a holistic way as a brand expression. And one of my most known is AliNICOLE WOW. She does it all. And so I've created this empire that is very much a unique expression of me. And I have over 1,000 platforms that I'm cross-branded on, and they serve different industries. And I have over 300 publications on Amazon that too serve different industries. And I'm cross-trained in over 200 areas. And so what I teach is on a very multiplicity, multifunctional, cross-functional way of being able to leverage your life and the whole of who you are as a business expression. And so what Gina is alluding to here in terms of the uncomfortability of when being told to niche down and that not feeling comfortable. Well, of course, she's aligned with me because I've disrupted that, you know, that entire paradigm in a sense. I created different industries, new industries, you know, for this. And she was the perfect individual that fits right into this type of, I don't even want to call it a framework, but we'll just use that as a working definition, just, you know, in the moment, is we're in the era of expression. And I've been doing this for quite some time, well over a decade, and am the pioneer of being able to help others to create empires that are more like the super Walmart or super Targets of their branding, where they're not just focused on one core area. They're focused on being the unique brand expression and empire expression. And so, you know, with that being said, going back to what Gina mentioned, is that did not feel authentic to her. But there was no one out there demonstrating or doing this. So she didn't have the wisdom and the knowledge around that. And then when we connected, and then we started working together on different levels, because we've known each other for quite some time. And she got to start expanding herself in this more evolutionary way that she's talking about. And so she's created, oh my gosh, a variety. I mean, within a short amount of time, Gina, you published how many? You were already a number one multi international best-selling author, and had what, about 6 publications? Was it close to 6?
I think it was 6 or 7 publications.
Yes, 6 or 7
now
publications.
Over 30.
Now over 30, exactly. And those happened, those 30 have happened in a very short window of time. And it's for a variety of different areas. Right? Yeah.
Certainly are, yeah.
Right. And so she's created several new empires, and that's what she has several empires in several platforms, you know, training hubs, and they are expressing this wide range, you know, of her gifting in leadership, but also has expanded, you know, even far beyond that. And she's even added new niche focuses, you know, that have come into play. And so, yeah, and so this is very exciting. I think it was important to actually share this, is because if she would have stayed in that loop, that continuation of what she was doing and listening to different experts who are still operating from that that very old paradigm, in a sense, is that it wasn't authentic for her. And as she mentioned, it works for some people who aren't ready or aren't called into pioneer leadership to do something different. And so she represents the epitome of the new authentic expression, the new genuine expression. And so that is actually, Gina, as I was being present with the whole of the experience, is that, again, that's kind of the more illuminate factor coming up, of being able to allow others to know that you actually are not being a genuine brand, a true authentic brand. Because authenticity, though it is unique in an individuality type of thing, but we also have to remember that we are in different eras, and in different eras, we have an assignment within those eras. And if you don't keep up with what the progression is in terms of your uniqueness and what you're here to be demonstrating during that time, then you can't be being truly you, because there's going to be an element that has to be synced up with that era for you to express during that time. And so that's what you've been doing and been preparing for, you know, over the last year, for, you know, for sure, is being this more, the epitome now of the genuine expression. And so what you've seen before was just a seed and the conception of that particular empire, but now it's in so many different dimensions that want to be, that want to be expressed. So when we have other individuals who are where you've been in terms of spinning their wheels and thinking, well, I have to do it this way because someone said that I need to do it this way. And maybe if I stick to it long enough, it will work. But not being able to be sensitive to understanding, they just don't even feel comfortable with limiting themselves in that way. And so that's something that the whole of the experience is communicating at this point, is that it is about expressing not just the authentic, the higher authentic truth, but also the limitless potential that will continue to be untapped and unknown, and then not untapped, not tapped into if individuals aren't even aware, of this greater expansion, if that makes sense.
It certainly does. And you can't access your unlimited potential when things are corralled in a way that actually is more about people's conventions and reality
than about your unique alignment, right?
That's right. And so it's only when you are completely aligned with yourself that you can then see the potential possibilities.
Absolutely.
Not even aware of them unless you're in alignment.
Exactly. And with that, if there's not the awareness of exactly what you just said, then certainly one can't make the impact and the income that they're here to make, right?
No, I mean, everything is limited by that false construct, which is of our own making, and it comes from not back to almost where we started today. It's not listening to that inner voice which says, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't feel complete, or it's not expansive enough, or it's in the wrong direction. But we're so busy, I think, most people, in trying to please other people, trying to fit in, trying to be seen, to be doing what other people tell you is the right thing, that creates the white noise that gets in the way of you hearing a message which says, this isn't the way, there is something better, something more expansive, something
absolutely
more, and I think many people go through their whole lives, not only, because these principles don't just work for business, do they? Work for life.
Exactly, they work across the board. Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because when we think about being able to brand ourselves in different areas and not be constricted to that quote unquote status quo, that old paradigm that really has been the biggest detriment, especially to a pioneer authority and pioneer brand, for sure. But we have to think differently about our ways of being in life and in business. And going back to something that you mentioned early on, is that this is a process about being able to be expansive in your thinking. And so if we take it back to just the fundamentals of just life in general, so we are more than just one role in life. So if we are more than just one role in life, what says that you can't be more than one role? And certainly there are different roles that are more prominent, or more of the primary roles. And, we have your majors and your minors, but it becomes just as easy as being a woman, okay? That's your birth gender. So you just speaking of us here, but we are different things. I'm a mother. I'm a businesswoman. I have multifunctions, and like you've been a teacher. You're somebody's godmother or auntie or so. So there are different roles that you play. And when we translate this or be able to bring this into our business functionality, we can show up in various different roles and not be confined to, oh, well, you can't do that, because you're only supposed to be this. And though maybe that's not what the experts want others to believe, so to speak, but that's really how it comes off. And I get what they come up with, the philosophy. If you try to master, become a jack of all trades, you become a master of none. And one of the things that you've heard me teach about, and actually you've actually hosted a masterclass training for me on that topic too. So we'll have to include that, as a bonus in the link, in about multiplicity entrepreneurship becoming the new normal. And, how within that spectrum, we have to understand that you don't want to get caught in thinking, okay, if I'm trying to do all these things, I'm not going to be effective. The biggest elephant in the room that they leave out is that, but if you become a master of self in your divinity, you can defy the impossible. And so all the teachings around self-mastery, personal mastery, well, why can't that equate or transfer into this spectrum? Because I've done it, okay, where I mastered self and became a master of self and became an authority in that area. And then my divine nature and spirituality, and you marry those, then yeah, you become an unstoppable force at that point that can't be told, I can't do this, you can't do this. It defies, all of that. It disrupts, all of that. And that's, Gina, what you have been being prepared more so to do in a variety of areas. And you can see it as it's playing out in all these different roles, for your leadership strand, and it's just expanding, far beyond that. And so I know that they say, well, if you focus on this one thing, then you can go on to do multiple things. But really, if you focus on a core mastery of a skill within yourself, then you can multiply those efforts. And that's very different than if you're trying to, do all these multiple things, like it's at the same time. But it's actually not how it works. And what I'm continuously getting from the whole of the experience, which I love this because this is not centralized from the jump in this premise of what we're doing in this session. It's not a specific empire that is saying, okay, communicating at this time. It is the whole of what the brand expression wants to deliver and demonstrate. And that's going to be a transferable skill, if you will, across the board. But communication is the primary vehicle that, is wanting to lead. So at this time, let's now that we kind of have that overall generalization, so let's be present and see if there is at this point now a particular empire that is maybe definitely wanting to be expressed or secondary, or it could be also too that a journal that you have present, may jump out at you and it could provide a trigger. So you'll just be present and you let me know when you're ready to move forward, and I'll reserve my commentary for the moment.
I don't know whether it's because it's the thing I've been working on most recently, but what's springing to mind is the journal that actually is just in production at the moment.
Yes.
Taking the bullshit out of leadership, and actually it fits so well with the authenticity.
Right.
And we had a brief conversation yesterday about how it's holistic in the fact that, you know, there's bullshit in every area of life.
Exactly.
And so, as I say, I'm not quite sure whether it's just because that's very much what I have been focusing on in the last couple of weeks, but that seems to me a message which is important and has multiple strands to it.
Absolutely.
The principle is constant, but the actual, it's almost like seeing, you know, a diamond has lots of different facets
to it,
diamond.
Yeah.
But so that's the thing that's popped up.
And that's not surprising, and that is again accurate, because and you and I have had, you know, conversations, like I said, about this as well, is that definitely had communicated to me even before this process that it was going to be something very signature. And I even mentioned to you how that can even be leveraged even within the empathic, you know, aspect of something that you're going to contribute to for me, but also can be leveraged, you know, obviously within, you know, what you're doing, you know, as well. And so that is one of the signature aspects that has been coming to me in terms of even with your branding, and allowing that to be kind of a leader in a dominating force. And what I mean in a dominating force, because, you know, I teach on all these different levels, and especially in the chess factor, the media chess factor of being able to communicate and checkmate and dominate. And so one of the things that people need to do during these times is really get real with themselves. And a lot of times, if people stay within those confines of that old, outdated paradigm that has really collapsed, is that they are kidding themselves. That's where the BS is. They're BSing themselves of thinking that you're going somewhere with this, and it's actually not going anywhere that's going to be very meaningful and impactful. And it's going to be a lot of time that has been wasted, and a lot of untapped potential that did not get reached. And this is the time to be able to step into a new space and to step outside of that, and don't kid yourself. And so all of this is very much aligned. And one of the reasons, as you can see, why sometimes I don't just communicate initially some of the things that I have already received, or even getting in the present moment, is because allowing that wisdom and insight to come through to you, so you can make the distinctions of whether it's your voice or whether it is the empire's voice, or the context of the experience. And so what I can do is come and confirm, you know, for sure, provide the jump starts and the triggers, but then come back and confirm it, that is very accurate. That is what is actually going on. And that is where you're going to serve at a higher level, because, you know, you have that boot camp style kind of authority. You have that part of you that has no problems with, you know, being the hand that's gentle to hold, the guide, but also the one, as you say, give you a loving kick up the bottom, you know. And not that that's a functionality that you stay in, but this is the time where that part of you wants to come forth in the empire expression in more of your bold way and more of your authority, and being compassionate and concerned about the next level of leadership and influencers, but at the same time making them aware. Don't fool yourself, don't kid yourself, do not be in, you know, what I call self-induced ignorance. You know, do not stay in these states of just being unaware, and then when you see something new, being skeptical about that and not really wanting to start to move in that direction. So there's the part of you, and the empire is actually kind of nudging you even more. That's why this opportunity, you know, had come about for you to do the talk around that, and we'll make sure to include a link to that talk, and then also when the book is out, we'll make sure that the book is too included, you know, within the description. So, you know, on this awareness with knowing that that can be expanded and expounded upon, there's something else though that's coming up around that. Is what I sense is that there's a kind of a secondary focus, and this could be in reference to the profitability aspect. Is kind of what I'm getting, is that, you know, people are not just kidding themselves on all these different levels with their leadership, because yours was, you know, primarily focused on the business leadership aspect. Yeah. But obviously too, there's even though your work does touch on the profitability aspect, but also too, as you can see, when you were working on this, the first working subtitle that you had, you were kind of going to put it to profitable enlightened leadership, which is one of your key, you know, your primary training hubs and has been your primary focus. But what's happening is that was not meant for that particular work there, but there's the aspect that is going to address for people to stop BSing around the profits front. And I remember even having a conversation with you, and it's been some time ago, where I said that there's going to come the time where you're going to have to, you know, talk about the profitability on a level that most people are uncomfortable with, because we like to stay in the comfortability of the holistic profits realm. And that's fine, because it does need to be taught from that premise and not so much just the focus on, you know, the monetization. And of course, the works that we do and works that you have in Empire's training hubs are really about that holistic focus. But, you know, there's a time and place for everything. And if people are scared to talk about the money and to be about it in a certain way, then they can't expect the profitability grid to fill in, because remember, this is about relationship and connection and vibration, right? So if we're afraid to really talk about it and we want to sort of be cute about it and dance around it in terms of, well, I don't want to make it seem like it's all about the money. But, you know, but there comes a time where actually it does need to be that. It actually does need to be where this is the focus, because that could be the very thing that's keeping most people from actually profiting on a higher level when they are concerned about how it's going to be perceived. But like anything in life, there's different categories and different categories of prioritization. And sometimes the priority needs to be on the higher profitability, because if someone spends a lot of time in terms of, you know, I have all this abundance. I'm very abundant in time, and I'm very abundant in friends and everything. But that level of the profitability and abundance, you can't go and pay rent with that or take your business to the next level from an investment standpoint. So though that part of the holistic aspect is being embodied and embraced, and the core focus has not been on the profitability or the financial abundance, you know, in that regard. But then there comes a time where it actually does need to be there. And that's where the profitable, what I call the profitable ahas, can come to you in terms of, okay, now what part fills in this trajectory of the higher profitability? So the key thing that's coming up now in the present moment around the branding authority and being more authentic, in a sense, is being able to vocalize that aspect too, because you've been enlightened from your own journey, your own primary work, and you've embodied and embraced and built empires and platforms around this holistic premise for profitability. But now the higher illumination in communication also is calling forth for to say, okay, I'm going to stop BSing myself too by playing it safe just in this, you know, particular realm. But there's other people who also need this message too, and to give themselves permission that, listen, you can talk about this and be about this. And even if it is in a segment in a season, that you are showing up in this way. But if you're going to make the impact and the income that's going to be more meaningful, where you can reach the masses, then there is a way to be able to blend, obviously, the holistic profitability context. But at the same time, sometimes the money aspect needs to be the leader. So I'm very much in that energy, myself. And also, too, as you see, I have different trainings, just especially around the multiplicity concept, around be the honey and be the money. It's about being able to show up as that brand authority, that honeypot attraction factor expert. But in that expertise and that authority is that there's something there about it that is the attraction factor that also, too, brings the money element. So within that functionality is that I'm showing up and being my authority, but this is also about being able to be not just well known, but well paid, because it's about your worth, and being the valuable brand that you are is calling forth for that level of boldness. And even if it's just a conference that's done or something that comes forth to awaken people, stop kidding yourself, stop BSing yourself, because as long as you are afraid to go here, then don't complain when there's not the profitability there. So that's a lot of the insight, that's coming through, coming through in the moment. And so, so anything around that before we get present again on a deeper
I think
level?
there are certain sections or certain groups of people, empaths particularly.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a really common sabotage that they on the one hand, when you ask people, do you make a difference to your clients? They say, yes, I make a huge difference. They also say, I want to make a big difference in the world. But they then are very reticent about, first of all, recognizing their own value and then charging that value.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think in businesses that there's, that there are many businesses who where money is still a taboo subject, and as a result that they hide behind not understanding what's going on.
Right.
And I mean, I was talking to a client on Wednesday, and it's a fairly new business but growing quickly. And one of the issues is that people not paying, and their fear to be really quite clear with their clients who haven't paid that, that if you don't pay, then we won't provide the service.
Right.
That this fear that if I stand firm, that they'll take their business away. And
well, that's fine if they're not paying anyway. I mean, what business? There's not really business going on. You must want to
you talk about the lunacy.
Oh, absolutely.
And when I made that very point and said, well, you're doing all the work, you're paying the people, you're paying for the materials, and they're not paying you, why would you want them as clients? Because actually they're not clients at all, they're sponges.
Absolutely.
And you talked about the aha moment. So I think there are so many limiting beliefs and taboos and just madness around money.
It's insanity. It is very much the I call it the lunacy. It is definitely an empath, as you know, who are in the new definition energy operate, in that mindset.
So it's empaths, it's business leaders, it's also there are so many things. If you talk about in life, I've met many people and worked with them who have been in great debt, for example. And then you start to identify what they're spending money on. And it's spending money on, you know, I'm feeling fed up, so I deserve to buy something new, which they'll buy on a credit card and it gets hung in a wardrobe and they never wear it. Or, you know, they'll constantly go and have takeaways or eat out. And when you start to break down, you know, that they're living beyond their means and they're paying huge amounts of compound interest, the decisions that they're making are based on bullshit.
Yes.
Because ultimately, if they want to be debt free, and of course there are people who are in, you know, in very different situations, but I'm talking about people who have the capacity to live within their means, but choose not to by default.
Right.
They BS themselves into thinking that it'll go away. That, you know.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that, because you know that's not going to happen. Something that's coming up right now is that. So here we go. So there's an audio series where you are addressing these different levels of give me just a moment here. Okay, so you are addressing the empath, the leaderpreneur, and the small business owner. So these are three levels that you will speak to, and it is around this particular topic. And so since we're talking about the communication factor and the speaking factor, there's an audio series that needs to be created, like I said, and it's addressing, you know, each particular one. And so with this, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an audio series where everything is, these three areas are being addressed within that one particular audio. It feels like it's separate, but when you try to market it, there's going to be a cohesiveness where it's a core theme, and under that core theme are these different levels that you're addressing. I call them industry. So the empathic industry, the leaderpreneurship industry, you know, and the small business or you know, small organization or so, that particular one. So give me just a moment here, because so the first initial deliverable of this, if you will, is that these are just MP3 audios, but then there's an expansiveness that comes with it, the opportunity to then maybe do some type of VIP in a day box or a boot camp in the box, you know, stop BSing yourself on this area for empaths. And then there's a theme that you had in your publication about from BS to success.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it could be that this is the BS shift series, okay? But the core focus will be about not BSing yourself as it relates to the profitability, and addressing the empath, addressing those very, again, I'm going back to just calling them industries, those niche focuses, in a sense. The very things that you've been talking about, that is the lunacy, as we know, is the small business owners, just the different levels you've been talking about. All of them have a common theme, and it is about the taboo-ness around the profitability. And we know that the insanity around that is that, you know, that's a bias that's been created to be seeded into the minds of people, the service providers, so that it keeps those who are profiting at a higher level in business, so that they can continue to have people needing to work through limiting beliefs, needing to, you know, keep being afraid in this area, right? And so, you know, one of my core focuses as a solution catalyst versus a problem solver is being able to shine the light on solutions instead of problems, and not actually creating business frameworks that solve problems for people, but it's all about creating what is the next level for people. And a lot of times when people face challenges, it's really a call to the next level. That's really what it is. It's a call to maybe see it differently, and it can show up as an obstacle or opposition or a challenge, but really it is the opportunity for the invitation. And so when we're looking at individuals who are supposed to be in business, and sometimes you have to call them out, and I've done this before, well, go be a nonprofit. But don't have the insanity of I'm in business and not be in business to not just add value, but to profit from business. So that too is a one of your bolder aspects. And again, we'll do some co-facilitating, you know, on this area for sure, because obviously I'm not afraid to go there. And have several works around that already, and also more that's, you know, emerging, you know, too. And the grander context is that a lot of what you're going to be doing in this newer energy are things that we are going to be co-facilitating together anyway. But then also you having, as I mentioned before, you know, kind of your separate strands, you know, from those initiatives as well. And so, yeah, so the first thing, again, is the first deliverable is to create just these MP3s. And what it is that they can be videos, but there needs to be the audio component of it. So, you know, and it's just to really jumpstart the initiative. And then from there, like I said, then the more expanded, you know, product or conference or so can come from that, and more of a signature talk can be born, or what I call your master talks. And one can be a major, one can be a minor, your mini talk, your minor, and your major. So it may be that, give me a moment here because this is coming a little bit more clear. So actually, yes, it is a major, a mini, a major, and a minor. And it's interesting that it came in that order. So basically the mini talk will come first. The major signature talk will then be formulated, and then the minor talk will, you know, will come out of that. And so what we'll do, even apart from this particular session, is we'll start to formulate that and be able to develop all these different aspects that we've talked about today, because the best thing at this point is for you to step more into that authentic, genuine part of your branding for this space. And that is actually the one that's calling people up and out. The divine duality, as I call it, you know, bring the blessing and the bitch slap, that you can operate on both of those trajectories, both of those strands. And so though you're here to bring the benefits of adding tremendous value to others, but you're also here to say, listen, I'm only going to say this once, because I'm not going to spend time going through this continuously. We're dealing with grown people here. You better listen up and you better hear this. Here's what, yes, we can go from this place, but here's where you need to look and be accountable to yourself in terms of, no, you are kidding yourself at this point. And you can stay in delusion and la la land if you choose to. They won't be coming along with you, but you are the one just making them aware that, okay, I'm shining the light on this for a moment, and I can help you in this season to make that shift, but I'm not going to be getting involved, you know, in your treacle, your fecal mess. I'm not going to be getting involved in that part. You know, I'll make you aware that you got it. That's what's happening. But now it's going to be your responsibility to clean it up. I'm going to give you the tools to clean it up, but we're not going to linger into this because you're not interested in reeking in that, because you're already evolved and expanded from that. And that's pretty much why more audio products are being asked to be developed, because it's actually after you, here we go, after you really kind of release this, it doesn't stay at the forefront of the branding. It's just what's coming for the moment, for you to be more authentic and to kind of get that part of you out in a more bolder way, because out of that, it's going to birth something completely different that actually won't necessarily be on this particular topic, but it's that you have to move the energy there first so that this newer expansion can take place. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I can, I can see there are any number of things that fit under this umbrella, but they're actually, because it's stuff that I know really well, it's not going to be hard to create this. I so often over the years, I've said to clients, my BS meter is really, really ringing.
Right.
And that's, I think, one of the reasons why this as a theme resonates, because it's often at that point when, I say to them, it's really, really ringing. You can choose to listen to it and take note as well, or you can ignore it. But if you ignore it, then the only person that you are hurting is you. And that's often the breakthrough moment, when people stop and look in the mirror and see the pattern that's going on, perhaps for the first time that they've at least admitted it. They might have known it's going on. And it seems to me, when you look around the world, there is so much madness going on. We need to have people stop, take stock, and recognize.
Right.
And it's happening at so many levels, isn't it? Climate change, there's now so much evidence that we are destroying the planet that supports us. We've got to stop and do something different, but there are still people who are resisting big time because it's not convenient. So, but I recognize that this has got a very, very limited time frame. And
people need to have their BS examination sessions going on, right? Take inventory. You mentioned take stock, of your BS, and recognize it to be that. And sometimes people are too close to themselves that they can't recognize that, even though you would think, well, goodness, you can't be that kind of nose blind to yourself because it seems very evident. But again, when people become really accustomed to a certain way of being, it becomes a norm to them, to where they don't actually see that as, as problematic. And so then sometimes it does take individuals to come along and say, listen, underneath it. I can't see how you're not aware of this, but
because there's I think for almost everyone, you're just too close to yourself, that it takes something or someone to make things clear. But of course, you've got to be ready, open and ready to see or to listen. A lot of people, they've got their heads so far tucked up their own armpits that they don't.
That's a nice way of putting it, but you're right. I was going for something else, but you're right.
This is going out to the public, so I was.
Yes, right. Yes, I get that. Yes, right. But this is all rich. And again, this is the premise. And this is the part of the bolder expression, the more genuine, authentic expression of your brand in the whole of the experience that wants to come forth, at this time. And so that's the thing that's really coming up. As you can see, it's not so much of, okay, let this be the primary chief focus of this particular platform. It's like, no, what is the primary expression that the brand and empire cohesively, the brand being you, of course, and the empire being the business and the mission and all the different strands, within that, all the different facets. The marriage and the merging between you both, the unification here is saying this is what the expression needs to be. Everything about the boldness, and it doesn't have to just be on that particular aspect. It's just that right there is the one that definitely has come up as, the primary focus. But what I see is that eventually that's going to move more into the minor space.
Yeah.
And that bigger context, that bigger major is already, and it's interesting because it's already coming up, but I'm not being guided to actually share on that at the moment. And I believe the reason why is because in the progression of what's being developed, it's going to provide more context. And it's not something you actually need to wrap your mind around right now. The empath one, though, is the one, is kind of the starting point in terms of for the mini talk aspect.
Yep.
And the leadership one, give me just a moment here. Okay, so it's saying to stay with for the moment, to stay with the empathic expression, because that too involves the leadership entrepreneurial aspect as well. So actually, here we go. So you have two publications of mine, and one in which we co-authored together. So the empathic one, for the empathicpreneurs, the ruby red riches, or the red riches, because you've contributed to some, but the one that you have, what is the one that you have that you've been working through?
That I've contributed to?
No, not that you've contributed to ones based off of you going through that publication, but the one that you have is I think it's the red riches.
I've got the red riches for empathic entrepreneurs.
Okay, so hold that up for me, please. I just want to be present. Be present with the vibration of this here in the now moment. So here we go. Because empaths, of course, one of the reasons why they particularly BS themselves too in the financial aspect is not just because there's so much of the insanity and wanting to feel spiritual and not charged, but we also know that they have unhealed wounds, and their root chakras are often out of balance. And so there's an element to this which we will expand and expound upon the contribution that you did to one of my root chakra publications. And we said we'll repurpose your afterwards into, into something else. And so I believe a lot of that will come into play. But what I'm picking up at this moment, I'm actually going to have you to go into the journal in just a moment. But what's coming up here is that there's going to be an element to have the compassionate side, but then also the ability to sort of dig in a little bit on this area. And so what this means is that, yes, there is the side where people don't want to, and empaths, particularly at this time, don't feel comfortable charging, right? And though some of that is coming from the unhealed wounds and the chakra lack of imbalance, or lack of balance, I should say, in the root chakra. But from just a logical perspective, it still doesn't make any excuses not to be stepping up and showing up and actually doing the work in these areas. Because what we find is that a lot of them actually aren't doing the work in the areas that's really required. They may keep going to conference after conference, taking course after course, to be more empowered and knowledgeable. But what we find is that the areas they actually need to be working on to heal and move forward, they're actually not working on those areas. So there's the opportunity for them to be able to do some work, with their root chakra, so that they can ground themselves better, and build that financial container for the next level. And so you'll be able to speak to that context, and also too with having the publication, not only that one, but also the one that you contributed to. But even if we just kept it for that one, because that one specifically is for empaths.
Yeah.
There's okay, give me a moment here. All right, so do you have a recent entry for yourself in there that you're comfortable to share? Or if not, something that pops out from there is coming up to be a trigger.
I think rather than sharing something that I put what brings out, it's interesting because it's sprung out before. It's obviously calling again. The new fundamentals are all about entering into a new dimensions of your chakras in order to gain clarity for the greater realizations that leads to more expanded revelations about the new foundations, new formation, and new functionality for the root chakra.
Okay, so I'm going to get you to read that again, but a little bit slower.
The new fundamentals are all about entering into new dimensions of your chakras in order to gain clarity for the greater realizations that leads to more expanded revelations about the new foundations, new formation, and the new functionality for the root chakra.
Yes, okay. So for yourself, before we go into what I'm already picking up, this will be for what they need to understand and embrace from what you're going to be doing with them. It's interesting. Of course, you're my STAR Queen Celebrity-preneur Protégé. And so there's a lot of things coming up for you in terms of the alignment to serve them at the highest level with this level of work. And starting at this base and premise, I'm just delighted by it, actually, because I know some things I'm not saying at this point. So I'll share about that in just a moment. So you said this was coming up for you. So what around that particular aspect? Is it more of all three of the foundations, the formations, and the functionality? Or is there one particular one? Or is it just the premise of it all? What is it about that for you?
I think it's the principle that as there's greater realization, so that offers more expanded revelations.
Yes.
In all aspects.
Yes.
And it's the as you something gets revealed, it expands. There's then the opportunity for new things to be revealed if you're open to it.
Yes.
And I think we, as human beings, we want things to be completed. We're goal oriented. I'll get there and I'll get to the goal and then it'll all be okay. And I think one of the things that strikes me is that that's actually not so.
Right.
It's simply each goal that you create, each expansion that you achieve, opens the possibility to even greater expansions.
Exactly. Right.
And greater expansions lead to more expanded revelations. So it's an ongoing process. And I think it's interesting.
We don't get to be lazy in this, right? Because it's a continuum.
Well, that's very true. But I can remember something my sister said to me many years ago is, you're so busy chasing the goals, you forget to embrace and enjoy the journey.
Right.
And I think that this is for me, it's a recognition that actually we are never done.
Right.
If you are open, these revelations lead to expansions, and it's an ongoing process. And if your satisfaction is only in achieving the goal, whatever that might be, you're missing out, because it's a narrow focus rather than where's this revelation taking me? What are the possibilities? that this opens up. And it's one's a very closed way of looking at things. The other is very open way of looking.
Right. And on the other end of that, because there's an opposite energy coming up, not for you, but for the ones that you'll be communicating to initially, those empaths, is that just as there's the journey of people being so destination focused and trying to chase the goals and to get to a certain point that they're not enjoying the journey. But see, here's the BS kicker. But there's also the ones who are distracting themselves.
Yeah.
You know, and not actually being present within the journey that's unfolding and doing the required work, because what they fear is that it's not only is it not ever going to be done in a certain way, but in doing it and continuing to go into these different levels takes away all the excuses. Because once you run up against one roadblock, so to speak, it's the invitation to greater expansion. And when people aren't ready to step into that, then again, they'll go and be productive. And people do it in business all the time, even around the profitability. They will kid themselves of doing a lot of busy work and a lot of different things and not actually focusing on the aspects that are really going to bring the profitability from the financial perspective. And so we look out, there's so many people afraid to even market themselves, afraid to even put out their offers. You know, how many authors publish books and don't even market them after the one little season that they've published it? But there are several who publish books and then they don't even market it. They just think someone's going to come and find it on Amazon. And though that can happen, but you don't really want to rely on that. And it's not one of these, we build it and they will come. No, as a brand and an empire, you have to be able to position yourself effectively within the market and show up consistently in the brand building, you know, initiative and create some momentum around that. But again, so many people distract themselves, whether it's leaders who have this grand mission, but yet again, they're afraid to want to be seen as more than just a charitable cause, but yet they want funding and they want their missions to be supported, but not bold enough in the right way to you know, position for that. And so again, as long as people are scared, and you and I can feel it, we're going to do a talk around this soon, because we've had conversations about this, you know, before, and certainly within the mastermind that you have been a part of, that I facilitated, that, you know, that came up, you know, quite a bit when focusing on your new high-end calling, is that it is about the experience, but there has to be the time where you have to step into that space and, you know, position yourself as someone who is here to make an impact, but definitely here to make the income that you're worth, and not to be conditioned by the marketplace or even the consumer. Because, you know, that's what happens, is that people show up to get services and then they start trying to control the dynamics of how you get paid for what you're rendering. And then it puts, you know, the service provider in that position of, like what you talked about earlier. Well, but I don't want to lose them, because, you know, that's all manipulation. And so there has to be the light shined upon that insanity, because it is. But also, again, going back to the impact, that part has to be, yes, you have an unhealed root chakra, or there's some things going on, but here's a resource or a process to help you be able to work, you know, through that. But just being straightforward and just saying, because you're not the one at this stage to be going with them around the loop and the loop and the loop and the constant is, but you have what can be provided for them, and then guide them into another opportunity. So with that, what's coming up now is, so go to the one that we co-facilitated, and we'll get ready to start wrapping up here. I'm feeling some finalization, you know, to this, because you and I are going to be working on some other things and bringing more cohesiveness, you know, to this. Initially, for this session, it really was just starting to hear the voice of the empire, but in this case, just the whole holistic expression of what wants to come forth as a brand. And so we've got a good sense of that, and then we'll start, you know, putting together more of the skeleton and getting meat on the bones and looking at the whole anatomy in terms of the major organs and all of that. So if you
I don't have the journal that I
the harnessing it's a workbook, the harnessing that one is coming up, so it may be
I don't have that here.
Oh, okay. I was thinking you had all of those. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so that is coming up. And so what will happen is probably when we get ready to do our next session in another context, that one will be being leveraged because it's actually coming up very strong right now. And so here we go. So, okay, I know why. And so actually it's good that it's not present. It's good that it's not actually present there, because what it is that there's a dual concept to this. Remember, you've not only contributed to that particular one for the empaths, but also the one for the leaderpreneurs.
Yeah.
And so, so what's coming up is that there's going to be the opportunity, because we talked about the leaderpreneurs being one of the areas that you would focus on too, of not BSing yourself. So there's going to be something that we put together that has wisdom and insight from both of those publications. And though you only have the one, that's not going to be a problem, because I'll be able to provide the triggers from the other one. Give me a moment though to be in this space, because again, that is, for whatever reason, that is really that's really jumping out. But I guess it would be because here we are talking about not BSing yourself as it relates to profit.
Yeah.
And so that's coming up really, really strong of being dimensional here. So, okay, here we go. The communication factor of this is what's wanting to be, expressed. So there are some elements of those particular publications that will come out in a communication format. It's kind of a lead-in. So what I'm getting is that you're going to be actually taking those two publications, starting with the one that you have, where you're actually going to be guiding individuals through the processes within those works. So they'll order the publication, and you'll be going through it with them in a customized way. But then there's also a cohort. There's two. Okay, one. Here we go. There's one that is is customized, kind of individual types of opportunities. Then the other one is going to be a cohort. So I'm just being present with which one is which. If the empath one is the cohort and the leader is the kind of like the VIP initiative or some type of event. So I'll let you be present with that as well, because it's actually calling upon you before we close out to kind of be present with what you get a sense of which one is for who. Or it's one to communicate that to you.
I can't say it's. Is
it feeling like both? Is it feeling like this?
Possibly, yeah.
Yes, that's okay, good. Because that's kind of what I'm picking up now too, is that it may be that one starts off being that you're just doing the individual aspect, but you can leverage both. So it can be a cohort for both strands. But it may just be that the way that the cohort is, okay, here we go. I got it. So one is going to be where it is more extensive, like let's say a 90-day cohort, so to speak. And then one is going to be like an event. So it's like a weekend that you facilitate something, and then there's a group, almost like a mastermind in a sense, but it's a cohort mastermind. And you will continue to do follow-ups with them. What I'm getting is that the one for the leaderpreneurs is going to be the one that's more event oriented, with maybe some follow-up, to with an extended action group, so to speak. That that's the one. And then the one for the empath is going to be more of the 90-day initiative. But they will also have to leverage the root chakra publication. And then, oh, here we go. This is going to bring in other publications. We're actually kind of bleeding into where I know that something we're going to be talking about in another session, where you're harnessing your empathic power comes in. So there's going to be an opportunity for a larger expanded cohort, around that. But all of this is going to be of them, getting out of their own way. Bringing illumination to the BS, but also helping them to create, helping them to create the structures and the systems to be accountable to themselves, because that's what you're really going to help them to build. How to best leverage the publications, how to create their own accountability experience, because you're not going to continue with them in this way. And this goes back to what I was saying about you being my Star Queen, protege, so to speak, is that, as you know, I won't deal with them in that realm. I have books and platforms and things to help them go through that metamorphosis in their own way of their own self-paced way, or customized way. But I will not, because I work in the high-end energy. Empaths who don't have their root chakra in check, as you've heard me say before, it's like trying to help someone build a mansion only to put it on a foundation of quicksand. And so you are in that space of high level too, but still able to provide the initiation, if you will, to say, listen, because I have been to this higher level and I'm continuing to ascend in this, here's kind of this final thing I'm putting out here. I'm going to show you how to create this accountability system for yourself to level yourself up, and then bridge yourself into this newer high-end work. And then you can meet me in this next tier if there's something else for us to do. But you can't facilitate anything long-term for them, but you can show them how to create their own cocoon, in a sense, and be accountable to themselves, during that process. So, so wow, that's quite a bit that has come up, isn't it?
Certainly has. I'm never surprised when a lot comes up, but I have to say I didn't expect this today, and it's very exciting, but all very doable.
Oh, absolutely.
Or should I say all very beable?
There you go. Now you're really speaking my language, because it all is about the brand beingness than it is about the brand doingness, and that's really what obviously my expression is about, being able to do it all. It's really about the beingness of it than it is the doing, because the things that I do, as you know, is in a very simplistic format, and that's why I'm able to multiply these efforts across the board, because it is very much an embodiment. And those who are in that pattern as well, in a sense, are finding these are the much easier, lighter ways. In the building of it initially, as you know, there's work to be put in when you want to be able to set up to build out massively. But knowing that that's not going to be the continuation, that's just like anything. You build a home, and if you're building a mansion, obviously that's going to take more work than it is just building an initial, traditional home. But once it's built, it's then the living and the functionality of it. The continuation doesn't stay in that particular format or function, I should say. So I want to take a moment. Let's do some deep breathing and be in gratitude to the whole of your empire, your brand and empire expression for communicating with us, during this time to, provide this clarity and next level of the adventure. So let's breathe and give thanks here. So Gina, I'm going to ask that you would be present for just a few moments to see if there are any final words or revelation that the Empire wants to, communicate, or anything that you want to communicate. So the space is there for you two to have that union.
I think what the Empire is saying is that this is a transition time.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that what we've been talking about and planning is the bridge to the new land, whatever that may be, that new landscape rather than land, because that's
it's a new trajectory. It's a transition into a new trajectory.
And that this is not going to be long-winded. It's not going to be it's going to be something that's going to happen fairly quickly.
Accelerated, yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing about the Empire. I think the other thing to say is that, if people have been drawn to listen to this, I would say to you that you've been drawn to it for a very important reason, which is it's now time for you to take responsibility for how you move forward, and to recognize that the key themes around what we've been talking from my perspective are very much around give yourself permission to take away the false limitations. Much earlier on in my work with you, you used the metaphor of a fishbowl. And if you think of a fish swimming around the fishbowl, because it's glass, it doesn't necessarily recognize that that's the boundary, but it's very contained. And that most people jump from a fishbowl into a fish tank, which feels more expansive, but it's still very, very limited.
Right.
And this is about jumping into the ocean.
Yes.
And having that huge expansiveness where, there is the possibility, if you choose to take it, of limitless opportunities and potential. And to say now it's time to be brave and to make that jump.
Yes, absolutely. Perfect. That was beautifully stated and so accurate. So accurate. Well, I can't say enough of how proud I am of you and your leadership. And one of the things I really commend you about, and I try to as often as possible, is your example and your demonstration and your willingness to continue to keep leveling yourself up. If others could be a fly on the wall to see your processes and how you're dedicated and diligent, to your expansiveness and bettering yourself so that you can be able to in turn share that with others and help them to take the limits off of what they're doing. And really, here we go, coming up, taking the limits, off of your authenticity.
Yeah.
Because some people are very constricted in their authenticity because they're operating out of one dimension of their authenticity and thinking that that is it, is your authenticity in a fishbowl, and have you gone from one aquarium of authenticity and just swimming around in that, but haven't expanded, into that genuine ocean of opportunity, where your real authentic calling and life purpose and leadership purpose is there in that more expansive field. So I believe that that's a great note to conclude on for sure. But I'm so proud of you. Can't thank you enough for being this demonstration for other leaders in different arenas, whether it be the empaths or the leaderpreneurs or the small business owners, or just whomever comes across this that can benefit from so many of the golden nuggets that have definitely been rendered here. So thank you.
And as always, so thank you for your inspiration, your support, and opening so many possibilities. I hugely appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, you are most welcome. And for the listeners, oh, she just warmed my heart so much right there. Thank you again, Gina. For those who are benefiting, from this, I just want you to keep in mind, especially those who are business owners, is that your empire has a voice. So definitely be sure to listen, get understanding, and take the right aligned, inspired actions towards your greatness, because you owe it to yourself, and you certainly owe it to those whom you're here to make an impact on. And with that being said, Gina and I are going to conclude, but we ultimately want you to go away being empowered and definitely stay blessed.